Alright, hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG, and today we are bringing you guys a pretty different kind of video than we normally do on the channel. Got a bit of a puzzle for you. So I've been going over this game state, the one where I lost because of the bug on Covetous Castaway, and I've decided that it's such a sweet and complicated position that I thought it was worth turning into a puzzle, because at the time I actually think my attempted solution in this position was wrong. It still easily could have won me the game, but there are just so many moving parts on this board. So I was wondering, basically, I was thinking that people might want to engage with that. I found it pretty interesting to do so myself, and I think it could be really satisfying if you're able to come up with either the solution that I offer or a solution of your own that works equally well. So with that all out of the way, feel free here to take a look at this board. There are lots of things on the battlefield and in the graveyard. Key among them in the graveyard is the Covetous Castaway, which when it comes back, it'll be a ghostly castigator. So for 5 mana, we bring it back. We're not really going to pay too much attention to mana, by the way, in this puzzle. But we get a 3/4 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you may shuffle up to 3 target cards from your graveyard into your library. So notice that we are on 0 cards in library right now. That's the card, if it weren't bugged, that would have allowed us to survive. So the question from here is, what is the best line of play? How do we best navigate this board state? And I'll give you guys a few seconds here to think about it. It'll take more than a few seconds if you're anything like me, and also just some time to pause the video if you do want to engage with this puzzle. And if you want to skip ahead to the solution, that's totally fine too. Alright, well hopefully that was enough time to minimally pause the video if that's something you guys wanted to do. So now I'll start trying to go into this solution. So what I was thinking originally when I approached this is that I could just bring back this Covetous Castaway. I would just get a bunch of removal spells, so I just get like Murder, Sinister Concoction, and then I could even use one of those removal spells to murder my other Castaway. And then because of that, I would have another Ghostly Castigator to bring back, and then I would just have, you know, an opportunity to shuffle even more cards into my library. But that's actually not necessary at all. So pretty much the funny thing about these disturbed creatures is that some cards like this, the way they're formatted, is if they would go anywhere from the battlefield, exile them instead. But for a card like Ghostly Castigator, the back half of that Covetous Castaway, it says if it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So pretty much what that means is we can flicker it. If we have a way to exile it and return it to the battlefield, then it'll come back as the front face, and then at that point we can like sacrifice it somehow and do it all again. So if we have a removal spell, that works. But we can also return it to our hand, because if we return it to our hand, at that point we actually can discard it. And that saves a step. So I was thinking, again, that Murder and Sinister Concoction, both of which are removal spells, could pretty much kill one creature of my own in my own Covetous Castaway, and one creature of theirs, and then when I would bring back the Castaway, then I could do it again. And then this time use removal on multiple of their blockers, and just hopefully have enough cards in library. But the really funny thing about this board state is you actually have unlimited draws, even though it looks like we have 0 cards in library. And that's all thanks to Drag Under here. So Drag Under, 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says return target creature to its owner's hand, draw a card. So kind of unfortunate that the draw card is not optional. But pretty much the thing you need to remember in this spot is that if we drag under our own Ghostly Castigator here, our own 3/4 flyer with that shuffle ability when it enters the battlefield, at that point we can get rid of it somehow. We can discard it, we can play it again and then kill it, and then bring it back. But regardless, the drag under will allow us to do that any number of times. So then the other question becomes, what cards do you get along with the drag under? Because the drag under, if you want to have as many turns as possible here, that's the necessity. You have to take the drag under. So very straightforward option, of course, would be Murder, as it is a removal spell. And yeah, taking Murder allows you to clear one of their blockers every time you go through the loop. But then the question becomes, how are you actually getting this Covetous Castaway from your hand into the graveyard so you can put it back onto the battlefield disturbed? And at that point I was thinking, okay, well, what about Sinister Concoction? And this is where things start getting really tricky. So Murder, like I said, not too many words on this one, just destroy target creature. But Sinister Concoction is just super complicated. So many moving parts. So you have to pay a life, you have to mill a card, discard a card, and sacrifice it. So regardless of the rest, we already know that's not something we're going to be able to do very many times, simply because we're at 4 life. And we look through here, we're not going to find any way to gain life. Same with the battlefield. So at that point I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's still best, maybe our best option is still to go through that loop for some number of times. And, you know, let's just see what happens. So what happens is basically Geist of the Archives is going to bail us out here. So let's say we get back Covetous Castaway, we get Murder, and we get Sinister Concoction. So the thing that needs to happen is we have to find Drag Under, and it can't be the bottom card. If Drag Under is the bottom card, then we die. And the reason that happens is because Drag Under says draw a card. So if we cast Drag Under, we have an empty library, obviously we're going to lose. So we need to be able to avoid that, and the way we can avoid that is with this Geist of the Archives. So what happens is, every time we get a pile of 3 cards, we're going to look at the top one, of course, when we go to our upkeep, and we're going to see whether it is Drag Under. If it is Drag Under, great. In that case, we keep it on top. And if it's not Drag Under, regardless of what the other one is, we put it to the bottom, because we need to find that Drag Under in time. And then one of 2 things can happen. It can either be the second card, and if it's the second card, then, you know, that's almost the same as it being the first card, because we scryed 1 to the bottom. And if it was the third card, well, we still don't deck ourselves, so it's fine. And then the question becomes, what happens with the other cards? So one of them is Murder, and one of them is that Sinister Concoction, right? So we need the Sinister Concoction as a discard outlet at this point. So we're using the Concoction to discard the Covetous Castaway. And remember, that is part of the cost here of the Concoction. Another part of the cost, very strangely, and it is a bit flavorful, it's a concoction because so many things are going into it, right? Is that you have to mill a card. Milling a card is very rarely a cost. Usually it is an effect. So it's really important to keep in mind that you have to be able to mill a card. And if you can't mill a card, well, you can't activate Sinister Concoction. So in that sense, it works a little like Drag Under, where if this is your last card, you can't actually do anything. So really what we're trying to set up at this point is Drag Under, returning the thing to our hand, Sinister Concoction, we discard the thing from our hand, we mill our last card, which is Murder, to destroy one of their creatures. We also lose 1 life. So we're able to do that 4 times. and we're able to do that 4 times whether or not we find Drag Under first, Sinister Concoction second. And the reason that's the case is because Murder acts as a way to quote-unquote sacrifice our Covetous Castaway, as well as remove one of the opponent's creatures. Though in this example, Murder doesn't actually do anything. Murder is just a safeguard. So remember, the card we're milling here is Murder, so in that sense it doesn't do anything. But let's say we find Drag Under into Murder, or Murder into Drag Under, same thing. Either way, the Sinister Concoction doesn't do anything in that example, and we need the Murder to put the Castaway in the graveyard. So then we can bring it back and try again. Basically, we're just reshuffling over and over until the scry sets us up with the cards we want in the order we want. And so we can do that 3 times, go down to 1 life. But the question is that good enough? Is there a way we can improve? And the answer is yes. And so one way we can improve here is by taking Blood Fountain, which I should have pulled up here, and sure enough I do. So Blood Fountain works much the same in that it is a discard outlet. So this is a card we can get back instead of, for instance, that Sinister Concoction. And if we take this Blood Fountain, then we are able to rummage away the Covetous Castaway. And again, the cards do need to be in the right order, but nothing horrible happens, again, because of the Geist, if they are not. So we're trying to go Drag Under into Concoction, or whoops, I said Concoction, but I meant Blood Fountain, and then from the Blood Fountain, we find Murder, we get rid of one of their blockers, we can return a couple of creatures from our graveyard, thanks to that Blood Fountain. And yeah, then we can rinse and repeat. That is pretty much how that loop works. I don't think I have any more explaining to do in that regard. It's really the same thing, but the idea is you always have the ability to repeat that one. And as I was going through that loop, I realized something obvious, potentially something you guys figured out, maybe if not from the board itself, from the open tabs here on my computer. So Murder of Crows is a card that we have in play. And because we have Murder of Crows in play, we actually don't need a discard outlet. So we don't even need to use the blood from the Blood Fountain. We don't need to discard a card from Sinister Concoction. The Murder of Crows, in conjunction with the Murder itself, actually is pretty much the whole solution here. Because the way to navigate this board state, the best way to do it, is if we go Covetous Castaway, we get that Ghostly Castigator, we get Murder, and of course we need to get Drag Under. Then we still are going through the same step here with the Geist to the Archives. We're going to bottom anything that isn't that Drag Under, just so we don't accidentally deck ourselves. Though arguably another way to do it could be, if it's Murder, we can top that, and then the next scry we top exactly Drag Under, and then, well, actually no, I take it back. That's not the way we should do it. So the way we should do it is always bottom the card if it's not Drag Under. Then if it is Drag Under, we Drag Under, we return this thing to our hand, we draw a card. Then if that card is Murder, then we did it. We murder one of their creatures, Murder of Crows triggers, we draw a card, discard a card. So we then discard our Castaway, we're down to 0 cards in library, and we can even cast the 3rd card that we just drew because we discarded the Castaway instead. And it's actually not relevant what we get at that point. We just need Drag Under and we just need Murder. It's probably best to get something like Blood Fountain still, just because there's so much value associated with it. probably makes the loop maybe a little less time consuming. You might notice that my clock is already pretty low here. But that is pretty much it. The solution here is that, like I just said, Covetous Castaway, getting Drag Under, Murder, and any third card. It's important to remember that the Scry needs to set you up so you can get that Drag Under early. And it's also important to remember that if you don't get Drag Under as the first card, and that would prevent you from looting here, right? Because if you find Drag Under second, then Drag Under draws you a card. You have 0 cards in library. You don't want to loot at that point because you will lose. It's always fine because you can just murder your own creature. So that's pretty much the loop. You can go through it any number of times. And yeah, I hope I did a good job explaining this. It's very clear to me, but really no idea what it's like from the listener's perspective. Hopefully, maybe just the raw number of times I said similar things helped clarify it. But yeah, just wanted to share this with you guys. It's a really, really intricate board state that you don't see stuff like this come up super often, especially in a weird chaos format like this. But just wanted to share if the card wasn't bugged and if I had a little more time to sink into this, exactly how painful it could have been for my opponent for me to sort of take infinite turns and just slowly kill all of their creatures. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed this puzzle. Let me know what you guys thought of in the solution. Did you find the Murder of Crows trigger right away? And yeah, regardless, we will be back soon for more draft content.